I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Royce, if you can play the role of clerk pro tem, please.
Love you, bye. I love this surprise. Oh,
Bye.
Is there a pen up here?
There is. I promise you, this will be a
Quick.
quick one. If you can call the roll, please.
Mrs. Franson?
Here.
Mrs. Hoover?
Here.
Mrs. Royce? Miss Royce. Mrs. Bowling? Mrs. Winterbauer? Mr. Gerton?
Here.
Mr. Braden?
We have 4 members present. That does constitute a quorum. So we will move on to the only item that is on the agenda here, and that is a public hearing. So the City of Norwood will hold a public hearing on April 23rd, 2024 and April 29th, 2024 at Norwood City Hall, 2nd floor Council Chambers, 4645 Montgomery Road, Norwood, Ohio 45212, for the purpose of hearing public comments on the City of Norwood's community development needs and to discuss the possible submission of one or more Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, applications for the next 3-year cycle, 2024 to 2026. The CDBG program is administered by the State of Ohio Office of Community Development, OCD, and will make funds available to eligible local governments over the 3-year program cycle for housing, economic development, public facilities, public infrastructure, and planning activities with the principal purpose of benefiting low or moderate income persons. The City of Norwood is applying for any available amount in CDBG funds for those purposes. The hearing will provide further information about the CDBG program and will allow for citizen participation in the development of any proposed grant applications and order to provide technical assistance to develop alternate proposals. Comments on the CDBG program or proposed projects will be received at this time. The hearing is being conducted pursuant to Section 570.486, Subpart 1 of the CFR in compliance with the requirements of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended. I will go ahead and declare this public hearing open. Anyone to speak in favor of this matter, please step forward.
Good evening, Mr. President and members of council. I'm Ron Mosby. I'm the Executive Director of Norwood Together, a nonprofit community development corporation here in Norwood. And I would just like to submit for consideration, not only endorsing the application of the CDBG funds, but also to consider for, as you said, Mr. President, the economic development. Specifically, I know that we are working on a project that has just started, but we were really looking to help develop the west side of Montgomery Road between here, City Hall, and the library. And so 2 programs that we would like to offer for consideration would be, one, facade improvements for the fronts of the buildings on Montgomery Road specifically, as well as a what would be considered either a rental assistance or possibly rental abatement to encourage new smaller businesses to come in the form of perhaps, like I said, rental abatement for 3 to 6 months that would be able to help them get on their feet. So that would be one suggestion or recommendation that we have. The other is, and I know that some of you were not on council, I believe, at the time that we did this, but we did submit a description, of an affordable housing proposal that we are currently putting together as well. We worked with students from Xavier University, and what the first thing they did was they defined what affordable housing was, and of course we presented that here to Councilmember Hoover. I believe it was your committee. Mm-hmm. And then now we're taking it a step further, where we would like to have a policy developed, and we would like to also begin work on affordable housing within the coming year or two. Right now, Norwood Together is really focused on community engagement. For those of you who may not know, we have primarily 5 programs that we use, which all I believe are very helpful to bring out a lot of the characteristics of Norwood. So we have the International Art Show, which is part of Welcoming Week. We have the Norwood Historic Home Tour, the Gems of the Community Award, which recognize the volunteers that work so diligently here in Norwood. We also have the Welcome Bag program, which is a unique program that we provide these welcome bags for new residents, and that also promotes economic development through the use of coupons and encouraging residents to patronize the local businesses here. And then, of course, we have the quarterly get-togethers, which is no charge, and that also, I believe, promotes community development because, quite frankly, we provide a light meal, and we use local restaurants here in order to do that. So having said that, I believe that a lot of our focus right now is community development, but we would also like to, community engagement, but we would like to further work and certainly work with the city in terms of community development by looking at this aspect of affordable housing. And I do believe that the CDBG funds would be an excellent way to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else speaking in favor of the matter? Anyone to speak in favor of the matter?
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
in the audience is Clint Zimmerman. Are we allowed to ask him questions at this point?
You may.
Mr. Zimmerman, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Norwood has received this grant in the past. Do you have any recollection off the top of your head about an example of how we've used this money in the past?
Sure. The city of Norwood has used this money just recently for Varlman Avenue, the resurfacing of Varlman Avenue, the resurfacing of Robertson Avenue to Forest, and Forest from Robertson to just before the underpass. We have used it at least partially to fund the resurfacing of the tennis courts. We have used it for funding ADA ramp replacement. A lot of our curb ramps in the city are not ADA accessible, so especially when we have a road project coming up, we try to go in ahead of that and try to get the ADA ramps done using some of these funds. And that's just some of the ways that we have used the past CDBG funds. I think we're anticipating a similar amount. I think we got about $700,000 roughly over the last 3-year cycle, and I think we're expecting somewhere in that realm, I think, for the next 3-year cycle. It lays out, as President of Council just said, the parameters for what it can be used for, and those are just some of the things we've used it for in the past.
Mr. Zimmerman, just
Mr. Gurdon. Question.
Mr. President, just to be clear, did Mr. Zimmerman say that Norwood has had some of its streets paved without incurring tax dollars on its citizens?
Mr. Zimmerman.
We have, at least partially, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other questions for Mr. Zimmerman? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone to speak against the matter? Is there anyone to speak against this matter? Is there anyone to speak against this matter? Seeing as there are none, and those speaking in favor have already spoken, I will declare this public hearing closed. Next item on the agenda is to excuse the absent members. Mrs. Franzen.
I'm going to make a motion to excuse the absent members.
Motion by Mrs. Franzen to excuse the absent members. Mrs. Hoover.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hoover. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Ms. Royce. I will vote yes. Mr. Gurton.
Yes.
All members present voting yes, the motion carries. Is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Gurton.
I would like to make a motion, Mr. President, that we adjourn.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Motion by Mr. Gurton, second by Mrs. Franzen to adjourn. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Ms. Royce. I will vote yes. Mr. Gurton.
Yes.
All members present voting yes, the motion carries. This special meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you.